Ke kuahiwi no I kalani O ka pole ka pula Ka pui no I kalaina O ka papa amuhi ka lokola Ka loko I no I kalani O no uli la He aina aloha o ewa Aloha mai e na puala Na puaha he o kaina Aloha mai e na puala Na puaha he o kaina Aloha. My name is Tianna Henderson. I'm a program coordinator here for the Naulu Center. I'm here with my supervisor, Melissa Saul, Dr. Melissa Saul, and this space is a space that is a part of a federal grant, a Title III grant that is for Native Hawaiian health and wellness. And so we're just so honored to be able to have a presentation like this from one of our own. I've had the opportunity to get to know Kalani over the past few years, and even though I haven't been a part of her complete academic journey, I've really had that honor and privilege to be a part of this final part, and hopefully I've been a support to you, my tita. Kalani is a change agent within our society, includes everybody that she meets, is a true champion for humanity in the way that she sees people right to the heart and loves them that way. Definitely is one that will take in whoever is in need and love them completely and unconditionally. And for me, she truly embodies the Hawaiian value of kahiao, to give without the expectation of receiving. I'm gonna just read a little bit about Kalani and then her presentation, and then turn the time over to her. Kalaniopua Young, or Tatiana Kalaniopua Young, is a Mahu Wahine Plus and QTPI, a queer trans-Pacific Islander. She's a recent PhD from the University of Washington's Department of Anthropology, a former board member of the United Territories of Pacific Islander Alliance, FAFA female-led organization in Seattle, and a founding member of Tent City Queens at Honouliuli, Wai'anae, the largest and longest running organic outdoor village in contemporary Hawaii. Kalaniopua has served with a number of social movements and organizations throughout her life, including but not limited to Stonewall Youth in Olympia, Alternative Lifestyle Club, SPSCC, Transgender Advocates of Central Texas, the Gender and Sexuality Center at UT Austin, Queer Studies Alliance at UT Austin, Trans Action at UT as well, the Students Speak in Austin, All Go in Austin, and the Feminist Action Project in Austin, the Tent City Collective at UW Seattle, Tent City 3 in Seattle, People of Color in Anthropology Seattle, and Hui Kuli Ke Kako here in our beautiful Wai'anae. Today she's going to be presenting her dissertation, which is Constellations of Rebellion, Home, Makeshift Economies, and Queer Indigeneity. A quote that she starts with is, "We not homeless, the state is homeless. This village is our home, and this place is our birthright." Said by a villager at Puhonua o Wai'anae, Tirarela. Titarela, Kanawai, Titarela. In Wai'anae, Hawaii, and Seattle, Washington, the practice of tent city living offers important consideration for what it means to be alive, to be rebellious, and to be close to the Aina, land and all that feeds and nourishes. This manuscript theorizes the radical possibilities of a home-free subjectivity that refuses to be anything less, quote unquote. Through ethnographic data collection and grounded theory from 2014 to 2018, this work asks, 1, how does an analysis of bare habitants, indigeneity, and rebellion enunciate the gendered potentiality for a counter neoliberal insurgency? 2, how to do the stories of 10 city villagers from Seattle, Washington, and Waianae, Hawaii, reconfigure cohabitation, direct action, and queer indigeneity beyond the settler colony. And 3, how and in what ways are Maka'ainana, people of the land, and Kapo'e Honua, people of the earth, disrupting abandonment, unsettled sexuality, and decolonizing identity policies through makeshift economies of solidarity. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce my dear Tita. And from the knowledge that I have, the first transgendered Kanaka Wahine doctor, Kalaniopua. Yeah.
Mahalo Nui, Tianna, for a beautiful introduction, and I'm so honored to be in this space. So honored to be here amongst my peers, my ohana, the people I love, and the people I admire, and the people that inspire me, the people that help me. And I just want to say mahalo nui for coming out and sharing your aloha and taking the time to come out to Kapolei to share this space with me. So mahalo. Actually, I'd like to start with a song. And as you know, I'm mahu wahine, and I come from a family of karaoke singers. And so I would like for all of us to sing this song together. It's called Wild World by Cat Stevens.
Oh, I love that song.
And I really love this song because I think in many ways it captures my journey through this dissertorial process. And also has a lot of truth to it. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play the song. And oh, there's a commercial here, so just give that 5 seconds. And okay. Can you guys hear that?
Start something new, and it's breaking my heart you're leaving. Maybe I'm leaving. If you wanna leave, take good care. Hope you have a lot of nice things to wear, 'cause a lot of nice things turn bad out there. Ooh, baby, baby, it's a wild world, and it's hard to get by. Like a child. You know I've seen a lot of what the world can do, and it's breaking my heart in two, 'cause I never wanna see you sad, girl. Don't be a bad girl, but if you wanna leave, take good care. Hope you make a lot of nice friends out there. Just remember there's a lot of better beware. Wild world, and it's hard to get by just upon a time. Oh, baby, baby, it's a wild world, and I'll always remember you like a child. always remember you like a child. Ooh, baby, baby, it's a wild world. Too hard to get by just upon a smile. Ooh, baby, baby, it's a wild world. And I always remember you like a child.
Thank you, everyone. How many dissertation talks have you been to that starts with karaoke?
Come on, girl.
You know, and I
If you sell your
let me
home,
go ahead and get into this presentation here. There. Okay. So, I think we go here. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. And thank you for singing with me and sharing breath, you know. It's very interesting to think about song, mele, music. My great-great-grandfather, Henry, Tita, you know that story, Ke Amo. He was actually a union organizer. And what's very interesting for the Hawaiians who would organize their unions is they would actually occupy space and sing songs. And that was a form of rebellion. It was a form of protest against exploitation and against the abuses of employers. So mele is actually really important, and it connects us all, right? Music connects everyone, everywhere in the world. So thank you for starting with me in that spirit. So aloha mai kako, Kalaniopua, aloha, Kalaniopua ko'uinoa, no Wai'anae maiau. So I'm from Wai'anae. I'm also an in-between islands Hawaiian, which means my dad was in the military, so I often went back and forth between Washington State or Wakine Kona and Hawaii and my ohana in Wai'anae. My mother is from Nanukuli. She's from... Tita, could you help me with this? Thank you, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're amazing. Can we just say how beautiful Tianna is? She's just so amazing. My Tita. So, yeah, we can go to the... I'll just do that. Okay. We must. So, I'm actually going to start this presentation not with myself, actually, but with a relative that we're familiar with. How many of you are familiar with kiawe? Raise your hands. Ish? Yes. Kind of? Sort of? Okay. I'm going to start with a poem. All right. Here it is. Ah, yes. The kiawe, hello, testing 1, 2, 3. The kiawe are more than human tree relatives with whom I respect, honor, and revere. Ma kahana ka'ike. Knowing comes from experience. I lived in a grove of kiawe. The kiawe is a kind of jokester family member, funny looking and sometimes annoying, but always there when it counts. Kiawe are a reminder of where I come from and to whom I enjoy returning. If you put a group of kiawe trees together, it's like having family members willing to throw down when the no-heart-at-alls come to hunt you down. Kiawe trees form a kipuka here in the harbor of Wai'anae, a patch of forest that survives amidst a lava flow of real estate capitalism and neoliberalism. No more money? That's okay, the kiawe tree tells us. Come, make your home here. I'll protect you. Kiawe are strong, rugged, and relentless. Kiawe thorns can pierce through your slippers. The branches can fall and bust through your tarps. Flowering kiawe bean pods can fill the yards and cover pohaku, key leaf, and papaya. Sweep away the pollen, and the pollen will simply return like yellow snowflakes. The annoyance of kiawe, however, is tempered by kiawe's creativity. Take the pollen and bean pods for tea, add it to poke bowls and energy breakfast bars. But remember, as I've learned from Jasmine Yahiku, kiawe flour is not a reliable alternative for gluten-free Hawaiian pancakes, although we tried, right? And what a mess that was. Kiawe is a relative that I love to reconnect with, but I'm wary of. As a kupa aina Waianae, kiawe, who is not native to Hawaii, actually would be considered an invasive species, surrounded our camp near Kane Ilio Heao at Pokai Bay, where we would camp out for weeks. Our ohana would camp out there back in the 90s. Kiawe brought our ohana together to Laulima so that we could fuel the fires of the imu to cook kalua pig and lau lau. Kiawe gave us lickens, punctured our slippers with thorns, and punished us with falling ants when we were not too good. Today, kiawe takes on a different tone. Kiawe has moved from invasive relative to familiar relative, someone I know intimately. Kiawe protected my village at Pu'uhonua o Waianae from the settler state. It was kiawe who stood up and said, "Not here," kept us safe in the unseen shadows, not too visible for the settler colony, not too hila-hila, but just right. Kiawe's arms reaches for the sky in defiance. So whether I'm in the Mauka or mountains or near to the Makai, to the sea, it is kiawe. Kiawe who inspires me. Mahalo.
Beautiful.
Yeah, we can. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my ohana. So I'll begin with talking a little bit about my ohana. Here's my makuahine, my makuakane, my mom and dad. My mom is from Fort Road, Hawaiian Homestead, Nanakuli. My mom comes from the Aleka and Kapapa lines, and her last name is Aken. And my dad comes from the Kiama Ohana, Waianae Valley. And some of my ohana are here today, so mahalo for being here. I'm so blessed to be from my ohana. It's very rare to come from an ohana where you had so many family, and we had some family that was going to Baptist church, some was going to Mormon church, some was going to Catholic church, some was going to the Buddhist temple, some was feeding the sharks and, praying to the old gods, who are still around and still very much in power. So I was very blessed to grow up in a multi-ethnic, multi-spiritual ohana that made room for everybody. And so, in my ohana lineage, we have Chinese, we have German, we have French, Japanese, all kind, any kind you like we get, And so for me, in my mo'oku auhau, right, just like the kiawe, a lot of my ohana has come from somewhere else, yeah? Like pele honua mea ai. And in fact, one of my aunties was named Pele. So that's part of my ohana, my moku auhau. They are the ones who help to shape my intelligence, help to shape my ability to have the strength to continue in the doctoral program. It is not easy, but it's one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And so we'll start there. Thank you, Tita. Also, I'd like to start with heartbreak. my dissertation begins with heartbreak, grief, and sorrow and loss. Now, if there is one thing that connects us in this room, it's that we've all failed at something at some point, right? We've all been vulnerable. We've all lost loved ones, right? Which is a kind of failure, right? Because there's this assumption that all things are sort of immortal and that, you know, things will just carry on. And we kind of think about ourselves, we don't necessarily think about ourselves as like dying, right? But yet, death and loss is an intimate part of who we are and our being. So at the beginning of my dissertation, I confront loss. Actually, in particular, I lost my grandma, who taught me a lot about aloha when I was in 7th grade. And so that kaumaha was actually like the beginning of my intellectual curiosity into this idea of the unseen and the world that we don't see. You know, my grandma became spirit, yeah? And she went into the pole, into the realm of the ancestors. And so that was my first taste of real loss. And that shapes my mo'oku auhau, but also gives me some insight into this feeling of loss. So actually at the beginning of this dissertation, I had another kind of loss. I was in a loving relationship for 12 years with a kane who was an attorney from Texas. And we actually had a house, you know, with a white picket fence. And it was sort of this dream come true, you know, in that heteronormative cis narrative sense of the word. We thought about adopting children, and, you know, it was a really nice thought. And it was a nice dream that we had co-created together. And then around 2014, I was struggling. I was having a lot of issues. I was actually addicted to methamphetamines. And sex working, I had just come off of this long trip with survival, you know, trying to survive in a world that didn't really create much room for me to exist. And that's actually what brought me back home. So the thing that brought me back home was actually to go to the beach, to go into a pu'uhonua for healing. So when I came to pu'uhonua Waianae, I came because I had a broken heart, and I had just lost, I just experienced a breakup, and I was trying to heal. And initially, that's what drew me to pu'uhonua Waianae, because I needed a place to heal. A queer space that wasn't heteronormative, actually. A space where it wasn't about white picket fences and the perfect family. It was a place where everybody understood each other's struggles and where people were genuine. Yeah. And actually, I had ohana that lived at pu'uhonua Waianae. I had an auntie that lived there, and she had told me, you know, this is a good place to start over, you know. So my dissertation was wrapped up in that kaumaha, in that pain of loss. And, you know, there's this strong sense of, you know, there's a lot of pressure when you're growing up. Like you should be heterosexual, you should be like a regular boy or a regular girl, and then you should have like babies, right? There's a lot of pressure for that. And in many ways, that didn't quite work for me, you know? I had an opportunity to live that world, but it wasn't for me. So I think in some ways, failure for me is really about not fitting in. And I just want to say that that's okay. I just want to say that each one of us in this space should allow ourselves the space to say, you know what? It's okay that I don't fit in. And that failure might actually be something the beginning to something new and unexpected. And that can be very rewarding. So, sorry, this is actually a picture taken at my camp at Pu'uhonua Waianae. So my husband here. Oh yeah, so after I had my heart broken with that other partner. That's right, sorry. Yeah, so you know like how when God closes one door, another door opens? Well, it just so happened that, and mind you, I'm not Christian, but I do use the word God, and I mean it in a very inclusive way. But when God closed one door, there was this other door that opened. I was couch surfing at a mutual friend's house, fellow anarchists, actually. And
thank you, Oren.
Yeah, thank you, Oren. And
we were at Kekuni's funeral.
We were, yes. Yes, so that's so right. We were there at Kekuni's, remembering Aloha Aina. It was Auntie Leandra White, yes. Kekuni Blaisdell, and Puhi Pau. And we were there honoring these Aloha Aina spirits, who had just passed on into the po. And these are incredible Hawaiian Kanaka activists who've been involved in protecting Makua from military bombing and starting a whole medical health program around Native Hawaiian health. Uncle Kekuni Blaisdell, and then Puhi Pau, who Namaka Oka'aina, like I cannot think or talk about Hawaiian land struggles in my class without referencing that incredible archive of looking at Hawaiian land struggles. And in fact, I showed some of those films at Pu'uhonua Waianae, but we'll come back to that. So I met my husband on a couch, and as you can see, he's haole. And I love my haole husband. And we do too. And there's ways that our love can transcend a lot of different kinds of barriers, which is amazing. So I gave up the ex-husband, who is this attorney, civil rights attorney, the house, the car, and the dog, and all that. And then I found this guy on the couch. And it was the best thing that ever happened. So then, and really, the big, huge problem was with my ex is that he would refuse to go into Pu'uhonua. It was like, he would say things like, oh, that's not funny to go into a place like that for healing. And I was like, no, that is a Pu'uhonua. That's actually where people find healing. Yeah. And then I met Daniel, and Daniel's like, I will help you build a tent, whatever you want to do, babe. And I was like, and that's when I knew. And it was sort of like theory of the flesh, It was like through our bodies becoming theory. And we became part of Pu'uhonua Waianae. And here's Saya over here, who's an amazing Terrell's Angels leader and has lived at Pu'uhonua Waianae and worked with the keiki there for many, many years and done incredible work. Ipo over here, my tita, still over there. And so actually I still go back there and hang out and visit my ohana. Because, for me, as an anthropologist, my work can't just stop. Like how white anthropologists can go into communities and then they can just disappear, and move on to the next project. Well, it's not so simple when you're Kanaka or when you're a Hawaiian anthropologist, because it means a lifelong bond. It's like forever, we're bonded. And that's important. And so, my haole husband helped me build this campsite, and he's such a beautiful man, and he speaks more Hawaiian than I do, actually. And we created this space there. We can go to the next one. Oh yeah, we can play that. So this is the Pu'uhonua Waianae. I'm currently in the field at Pu'uhonua Waianae, which is a houseless or home-free village here in Waianae. And this is my kitchen area. So I live here in the village, in part because I want to. Also, the housing options that are available are completely undesirable. And also because I have to like immerse myself in the full experience to really understand what it's like to be in a pu'uhonua, or what it's like to be in your own homeland, but without land and without housing. It's a tremendous amount of work, but we don't want to feel like there are no options. We want to create the options that are not currently available. We're trans, fabulous, and artistic, and you just gotta go on. You know what I'm saying? And as I build with my hands and I reconnect with the Aina, I definitely feel a sense of healing. To wish everyone well. Ahui hoe malama pono. Okay. No. Arrow. Use the arrow.
Hawaii, which is
Over here.
houseless or home-free village here in Hawaii.
There we go. Herbs. Purple herbs. And then we can hit the arrow again. Yeah. So this is actually a wedding photo of my husband and I. We got married at Food Not Bombs. How many of you are familiar with Food Not Bombs? Yeah. It's an anarchist group that believes you should feed the people, right? And that's what they do. They feed the people at Thomas Square. How many of you know where Thomas Square is? What is Thomas Square? What happened there? Thomas Square is significant. Why? La ho'i ho'i ea. And what else? Yeah, la ho'i. What is la ho'i ho'i ea?
Isn't the captain comment? Is it something as a captain or something? Mm-hmm. He helped us get it back when it was illegally taken.
Yes, 1843. Yeah. What happened in 1843, Kahala? I know you know.
The Paulette Affair.
Yes, and? Pella.
So it was the Paulette Affair. Basically,
Yeah.
there was this dispute over the Aina, and England comes and I'm like, yeah, give us your land and we'll take it by force. And basically what happened was the kingdom sent a dispatch back to England, and the British were like, yeah, that's wrong what our folks are doing out in Hawaii. So we're going to send Richard Thomas, Admiral Richard Thomas, back to Hawaii to declare that the sovereignty
Yes.
of Hawaiians is very much real and should not be alienated.
Thank you so much, Pella.
Restoration Day.
Absolutely. Restoration Day, mahalo. Yeah, let's give Pella a hand. Amazing. And Pella lives with me. And Pella's amazing.
For one more day.
And Pella, actually, if you hit that again, Tito, I want to show you. Go back if you can. Yeah, that's supposed to highlight. No, you hit. Just click on that. Yeah, click there. Oh, wait. It doesn't highlight? Oh. Oh, well. Well, anyway, in this, there's a picture here. You guys can't see it. That has all the people at Food Not Bombs. We actually met Pella at our wedding.
Lonnie invited me.
2016, right? So here we were at Food Not Bombs. Oren had made our aisle out of books and, you know, whatever get.
The ferns in the books.
Oh, yes.
Growing, living.
And Laulani Teal put the ferns in the books. So, and what's really interesting is like, you know, is like I married Admiral Thomas in Thomas Square. You know, everything comes back around, you know. It's not linear, it's matrixical. Okay. So when I went to the village, I was like, I'm here, I'm a PhD student. You know, I was suffering with that savior complex that you get when you go into anthropology. You know, the one that says like, if you go into anthropology, you can have this power to help people, you know? And, you know, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's a thing, and I had it. So I went there, even with all of my issues, trying to heal. I'm like, I'm a doctoral student, and like, I'm here to help you. I know. And one of the aunties was like, I was like, and she's like, looked at me, Tita, and she was like, looked at me, and she's like, how are you gonna help us? And I was like, I'm here to help with the homeless crisis. And she was like, Tita, we're not homeless. The state is homeless. This village is our home and this is our birthright, you know. So she, you know, schooled me. And, you know, I'm happy to be schooled. I think we should all practice that. So she schooled me in that moment. And it reminded me of my other auntie, my Auntie Bam, who's from my mom's side of the family, who would never identify as homeless, even though she lived on the beach in her tent for many years. She refused to use that word. In fact, she created her own term, which is home free.
Yeah.
And that actually became the foundation of my dissertation, this concept of home free, which I'll get into. And it ties into this comment. What's interesting about the word homeless or houseless, however you frame it, it marks people as less than. Less than what? Whole. Whole according to what authority? And who? Right? Especially if you're a Kanaka and your ohana have lived here for thousands of years. Nobody who's Kanaka here can be homeless. And that was an awakening. So I understand that homelessness can be used as a tool to get funding and that sort of thing. It has something to do with the settler colony and the settler state. But it really isn't how people self-identify themselves, right? And that was actually, Auntie was giving me language for my own healing. I wasn't a freak. I had a place to call home. Right? So even though I was mahu or homeless or queer or whatever, I knew that those were spells, right? That I belong, I have an ohana, I have a home, right? So me going into the village was also connected to my own healing. It wasn't just about me being a savior, right? I had to get schooled, and then I realized, wow, this is actually part of my own healing. So there's an autoethnographic component to my research project, obviously, because I'm indigenous. And, well, we can't talk about indigeneity without talking about settler colonialism, right? How many of you are familiar with the term settler colonialism? I somewhat hesitated to talk about this with my ohana in the room, but I think it's important. What is settler colonialism? Daniel.
It's where people from I guess in most cases an aggressive state that wants to take the land and resources from someone else, they ship all their people there to live there and kind of like try to get control of the space and the resources.
Yep. And it's also about erasing, along the same lines, about erasing the indigenous people of that place, right? So we borrow this term from Patrick Wolfe, who's an anthropologist from Australia. And his term, settler colonialism, is really to look at how invasion worked, right? So during the colonial period, you had this guy, Captain James Cook. He wasn't Pono, he wasn't, what was that?
Lono.
He wasn't Lono, he wasn't Pono, and he wasn't Ono, right? Yes. So Captain James Cook goes to Australia, and he's like, I declare this land terra nullius, right? And what does terra nullius mean? That means that the land was bare, uninhabited. So he declared a kind of bare habitants, if you will. And in doing so, obviously, were there people there? Yes, there were. We had some Aboriginal cousins that were living there, yeah. And he basically erased them. So the process of settler colonialism is about erasing indigeneity, erasing indigenous people and culture and language, and replacing that community with a settler one. Okay? So settler colonialism, and it's like settler colonial studies is like a new thing. You can actually major in it. because settler colonialism happens all around the world. It's not unique to Hawaii, right? It's a transnational project. Okay, you can go to that. Sorry, Tita. So of course, in the Hawaii context, you have settler colonialism, and it has a different process, right? All the processes of settler colonialism are not necessarily the same, though they tend to have similarities. Oh, Kanawai Mamalahoi. Yeah, my kai. Yeah, we can go to the next one. So Kanawai Mamalahoi is the first law of the Hawaiian Kingdom. What's really interesting about this particular law is that it was a law that limited state authority. So this law was issued by Kamehameha I, right? After he got into a scuffle with some fishermen, right? A Moku kiawe, his foot got stuck and he got cracked over the head with a paddle that splintered. Now these were maka'ainana, these were people of the land. These were not ali'i. And that he took as a divine sign that he didn't do something right, that there was something off about this interaction, because the gods had allowed the paddle to be cracked over his head and he could have been killed. So he issued this kanawai, this law of mercy. And later on, when the guy was brought to his court, when he became king, he actually pardoned him, right? So that is very interesting to note, that the first law of the Kingdom of Hawaii was actually a law to limit the abuse of power. And that's really important to understand why it is that we have communities on the beach and then other communities who come in Malama and Kokua, and we have this solidarity between housed and unhoused communities, right? Because we have this concept of kanawai, which is part of an older egalitarian system. An egalitarian system that is really rooted and routed to the idea that all people, right, all life should be affirmed, right? So there's a sacredness to life itself. So, okay, we can go to the next slide. And of course, you can look at the differences between Kanawai versus Western law, right? In the Kanawai tradition, it's about, the emphasis is on the love of life and affirming life. Versus in Western law, it is the fear of death, right? In the Kanawai tradition, it's about the respect for diversity, whether that's biological diversity, cultural diversity, versus in the Western law, it's about assimilation. In the Kanawai tradition, we value our places of refuge. We believe that there should always be a place in our Ahupua where people can go for healing, and that's accessible to everyone, and it's centered on grace. Whereas in the Western law, they privilege punishment, carcerality, and carceral landscapes. So we have this kind of tension here, and it still exists today, right? Because the Kanawai actually has not gone away. People still practice the Kanawai, right? And what does Kanawai translate to, for those of you who are Olelo speakers? Kanawai ho'oheno. It's law, but what words are in there? Vai. Yeah. And so it's about the flow of water, yeah. So initially those laws were set up to make sure that the waters were flowing to where they needed to flow to, yeah? Okay, of course, we have Queen Liliuokalani, who in many ways is kind of an embodiment of that Kanawai tradition, right? When she issued, basically she, Masahide Kato talks about this, where she doesn't give up her sovereign power, but she actually appeals to an older power than the Western imposed sovereign framework. So she actually goes back to the Kumulipo and she starts translating the Kumulipo to show that she is actually connected to an older system than the settler system that was imposed, right? And in that sense, it doesn't matter if the settler state continues to occupy, because we are connected through our kumulipo, which means we are connected to everyone and everything, and that life is sacred, and we still have those Kanawai traditions. She was also signaling to her people, in a sense, to look to this older system, this more egalitarian system that supports life itself and affirms life itself. Okay, this shirt actually was a gift. I think it's from you, Oren, right? The red ribbons.
Maybe
Laulani, maybe, yeah, that's true. But no annexation, of course. Those of you who know that in the political discourse and the legal discourse, that there is no legal treaty of annexation for Hawaii, and so people still are very much aware of that, and the U.S. government is aware of it because they've also noted that there is no legal treaty of annexation. So there's all these kinds of pushes to liberate Hawaii, and so what that liberation looks like is sort of a mosaic. There's various people are fighting from different fronts and struggling from different fronts, but all pushing towards this sort of broader panoply of liberation. Mahalo. Yeah, and of course the Ku'e petitions are connected to that push against annexation and occupation. And in fact, many of our kupunas are on those Ku'e petitions, right? And I'm sure many of you know about the Ku'e petitions, but we can talk about it later if you have questions. So 1941, martial law is declared. You guys know about martial law? How many of you knew that martial law was declared in 1941 after the bombing of Pearl Harbor? Yeah. So what happened? They put fences up on the beaches. They instituted a curfew. People were not allowed to go out, right? And what else happened? Go to that next slide. Land grabbings. So in Makua, you had a number of ohana, many of the grandchildren, the mokupuna of those families that were displaced from Makua in 1941, still live in Wyatt and I can tell you the story. And people were displaced. The military took over, about 26% of the land on Oahu. How, 20, was it 20? I'm not too sure about the numbers, but it's 20-something% of the land on Oahu was taken to construct military installations. So at the same time, you had all these Hawaiian families being displaced under martial law. Because martial law is also a state of exception. So what that means is that under this emergency declaration, the state can actually break the law, right? Because he actually, martial law is actually breaking the law so that the government could come in and take these lands. So, of course, that includes Makua. So the history of contemporary forms of economic exception, the reason why you see a majority of Kanaka Maoli who are living in the 10 cities is connected to that history. You can't divorce that history from the kinds of economic violence that you see. The inability to pay for rent, right, is connected to that settler colonial project, right, first with militarism, and then to make militarism look sexy with tourism. So tourism becomes sort of, I heard, as a way to kind of hide the violence of militarism, right? And we especially learned that from the work of Haunani K. Trask and many others, Cruz, I think, and Laurel May Singh, I think, talks about that as well. We can go to the next slide. But of course, we're still resisting, right? We're still out there. We're saying, yeah, Still, no treaty of annexation. I did that for the kupunas. And after statehood, all of a sudden, all these lands are for sale. You know, everybody wants to make a dollar, and there's just lots of things happening. The Kalama Valley struggle. And in the 1970s, you really start to see this concerted effort to stop all evictions now. And this was an effort, a multi-ethnic effort, right, with all of the different communities in Hawaii who are suffering from land displacement. It's no longer just Kanaka who are suffering from land displacement and being pushed. And it's everybody, locals, farmers, right? They're all struggling to live on their lands because the developers are coming in and the Bishop Estate is kicking the people off of the land so that they can build multi-million-dollar homes on that land so they can make a profit. Right? So all of these things are interconnected, right? And we can go to the next. Are you going forward? It is? Really? Okay, we saw that. Okay, let's stay here. So this is an image of Pu'uhonua Waianae. This is around 2014, and you can see that the way that the village is presented in settler media is to sort of show how this place is like savage. It plays into that savage narrative where indigenous people are savage and evil and demonic and all of those sorts of things. It harkens back to an older caricature of how Hawaiians were viewed in the eyes of the West. Makes sense? So there's this idea about Hawaiians being unruly, undisciplined, defiant, which we are. But also, it was a way for them to justify criminalizing our people, criminalizing us for standing up for our lands, standing up for our mauna, standing up for our spiritual beliefs, all of those things. It was a way for them to criminalize us by turning us into these characters, these savage, demonic characters, right? And so you still see that in the way that they portray. Obviously, there's a lot of issues in tent cities, but the way that it's portrayed is it never actually shows how it's connected to development, right? Or not, it's not connected to militarism. They try to alienate and individualize the failures of the people as opposed to looking at the distribution of wealth and how capitalism has shaped this outcome, right? Okay, next. And this is what I call a form of settler empathy. And by settler empathy, I mean Hawaiians are houseless. Again, that language is used by the settler colony and the settler state. And what they need is transitional housing. What they need is a carceral response that's implemented within a biomedical framework. Okay. And of course, the pushback, deoccupy Honolulu. What was deoccupy Honolulu, Han? Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, I think the main thing for me, and I just thought from my perspective, but I was just really happy that Laulani Teal was there.
Thank God.
And explained to a lot of us who weren't familiar about Admiral Richard Thomas and the Hoihoiea and Hawaiian sovereignty and the context that a lot of us were actually in our settler ways were not aware of. And then there was Kanawai Mamalahoi. And so it was an interesting coincidence or meant to be that this form of protest, which was adopted from the New York Occupy Wall Street, and it was living as home-free people do, or those called houseless. And so we ended up being very much in solidarity with them, and in that way, because we were living like them and being persecuted then the same way, because at this time, Tulsi Gabbard was passing these laws where they were criminalizing people that were sitting or lying in public places. They were allowing them to just put a sticker on someone's stuff, and I think there might be a sticker in that picture right there on that sign. Mm-hmm. And as soon as that picture was there, 24 hours later, they could come and just take anything that had pictures, and they said, oh, you can come and claim it, but they would also just throw it into a truck, into the back of a truck, and it's just like a big trash pile is what it looked like, and and they would take everyone's stuff, and it was funny because a lot of times it was enforced by HPD, and Laulani would point out like, hey, you know, HPD, their badge, the symbol of their authority, has the Kanawai Malahoi symbol, the kahili and the two paddles, and it's just the irony was pretty
jarring,
just fascinating, really, the cover up or the
I believe that the ordinance you're talking about is City Ordinance 54, is that correct, Oren? And 029, thank you, Oren. So basically it was a city law that criminalized people for lying on the sidewalk. And the other thing to remember is that Kanawai Mamalahoi explicitly states that if anyone removes, you know, kupuna or keiki who are lying on the roadside, basically sleeping in public, if they're moved, that it's heva, and that the punishment for that should be death. So in Kanawai tradition, that is a'ole.
Right.
You don't mess with our people, because basically what it's saying is you don't have a right to exist. Your life does not matter. That's literally what this city ordinance is saying. Make sense?
Yes.
And what's unfortunate is that those forms of displacement through the law has, just within the last 3 months, there's been about 40 forced evictions. And it's become so routine, right, that Brandy Nalani McDougall wrote a poem about it called The Second Gift, where she talks about we have become so numb to these authorities coming in and removing people living in tent cities. So it's really important for us to wake up to our Kanawai traditions, especially Kanawai Mamalahoi. And Laulani Teal was really key in trying to maintain that Kanawai Mamalahoi tradition. And I believe she was arrested at some point and in defense of Kanawai Mamalahoi. And there's, I think, some videos about that online as well. But, you know, really, where is our humanity if we become so numb to people being forcefully displaced from the beach? What does that say about us as a people, right? So it's really important for us to get forward to that Kanawai, bring that Kanawai Mamalahoi forward into the future. Okay, mahalo. And for me, this ties into Lani Tevis's work with Defiant Indigeneity in terms of refusing to be complicit in that narrative of continued displacement and dispossession and settler coloniality. So this is Sam Kama, you know, Danny Boy's good friend, and he used to actually go out to Pu'uhonua Waianae back in 2014, 2013, to go and feast and eat with the people. And here you can see, this is an image I took a long time, I think in 2013, and you can see it. There's the words here, it says Hawaiian living, you know, and it's really important for us to remember that it's not a celebration of poverty, but it's actually a reclamation of our power to define for ourselves, right, our own self-determination and how we want to live. And of course, I put the image of Haunani K-Trust because she's such a cornerstone for us in Kanaka Māori studies and Hawaiian studies. And she's just such a strong mana wahine, right? And in this picture, she's actually screaming, "We are not American," right? And what she's gesturing towards is actually this longer history of life-affirming kupuna and ancestors and ways of life that actually sustain life, right? So, just love her. And then, of course, in the village, I ran into my Auntie Shirley, who I hadn't seen in so long. And she was like, I was like, "Oh, Auntie, what, how come you stay over here?" She's like, "Oh, the transitional housing, only 2 years, And then they went kick us out. And I was telling the kind, she was just telling me the story about what happened. And she actually said that she enjoyed living in Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae more than she did in the transitional shelter. And she got to have her pets, her family could come visit, they weren't telling her what to do all the time. And so she actually was growing some squash, you can see here. So I was helping her make her garden and her kitchen. This is around 2013, actually. In the summer of 2013, I had received a grant to go to Hawaii from Seattle in the summer. And so I just spent my time, talking with some of my relatives that I hadn't seen in a long time, and they were actually in Pu'uhonua Wai'anae. Oh, and then my mahu mamas. So, yeah, so this is Auntie Sheena, who now lives in Las Vegas. And yeah, and we can play. Can
you tell us a little bit about the blades? Your blades. Did you ever perform?
No, I didn't, but I went in there all the time to go dancing. There were a lot of men.
What kinds of men?
Servicemen, of course. Those are the days when the money was there, the hairstyles, the sex. Did I say it? Yes, I did. They were good days. A lot of dancing, a lot of singing, a lot of shows, a lot of bad people too. Tourist attraction, a lot of tourist attraction. And you could go out there in 5-10 minutes and boy, it was time to go shopping. You know what I mean? In those days, it wasn't like it is today. Today, there's no Hotel Street. There's no shows. Tourists are gone. Servicemen's got banded. They're gone. Where are we today? Who knows? All over the world. Some of us are here, like me. Some of us are up in heaven, way up there. And some of us are just not doing anything.
Do you think we need to we need another war to get more soldiers?
Oh, no, we don't need another war. We need more gay clubs.
More gay clubs.
Yeah, some better shows. And get the old timers out, whoever's left. And get us some sponsors to help us build another Glades.
Yeah.
Get a news team like Tati.
I'm Tatiana Kalaniopua for Channel 5 News.
She's good. She's reporting.
And windstorm.
And terrorizing us young women.
Because you're so young.
I am very young. I am pushing now.
Remember what you said in the beginning?
It was deleted. Oh, I said it right. I'm pushing 59. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Not bad, huh?
Wow.
Yeah.
Check you out. Going out tonight.
We're going to party. Yeah, we're going to party.
Auntie, let's go see what we've got at the free store. Let's go visit our friend Duke. What is this place?
Another village.
This the
The store.
Pākē village. Pākē village. Honouliuli type people. Hi.
beautiful plants.
Thank you.
Very beautiful.
For everybody to enjoy. Yeah. No.
I might as well use the yellow one. Fuck, at least I'll have the attention when I walk in the door. That's to grandmama.
No, it's not.
Yes,
That's
it
a
is.
pretty dress. I'm gonna
It
cut
does. After you make it sexy, then it'll look alright.
I'm gonna cut the back all the way down to your
To the butt part.
Yep, that's where
That's how the yellow one is. The back is down to right here.
But I'm gonna cut it all in there, but it's gonna be like a V.
It looks so. If this is a little bit more, and this is too much material. When you walk in the joint, I can tell you we're mad extension. I'm in a big spender. You can't always look pretty on stage. Got to rip that makeup off and get into your next character. So you don't need to look pretty all the time. You're there to do a show. And that's what the audience came to see, a show. Ooh, boop-be-doo, doop-doo.
Oh, Auntie Sheena, she's amazing. So Auntie Leanne, when I went into the village initially, I asked Auntie Loki where I could sleep, and she's like, oh, I got the perfect place for you. And she puts me in the squirreliest place in the village. And some unsavory characters were there. I was put in a part of a village that is today, it's now like a healing space. But back then it was not. It was actually called Devil's Corner. And when my Auntie Pinky came to visit me at the village, she's like, oh, baby, you cannot stay in Devil's Corner. She's like, oh, Auntie gotta find somebody for help you. And so she found Auntie Leanne, and then Auntie Leanne adopted me and hana'd me as part of her ohana. And she put my tent right in front of hers so that she could keep an eye on my stuffs. And so Auntie Leanne and I have had many beautiful moments, just talking story, and we'd have tea time. We'd drink tea and talk story. And Auntie Leanne was kind of this complex figure. She was always kind of bucking authority, like Auntie Twinkle's authority. So she's like, I do what I like. I'm my own boss. And so I really appreciate Auntie Leanne. And this is actually an image of her from when she performed at Glades. And, when I told her, I was like, oh, Auntie, I can use this stuff. She's like, yeah, baby. Go use them, whatever you like, for her image. Because she was actually a well-known performer at the Glades. And in early last year, Auntie Leanne was hospitalized. She had some complications because of cancer treatment. And she was sort of there at the hospital. Her family had dropped her off, didn't really give her much explanation. Maybe they couldn't take care of her or something, but I found out where she was, and I went to see her, and she was telling me how cold it was and, how alone she felt. So I was like, oh, let's go. So I just took her home, and, as part of my anthropological work, she actually lived with me. And we had hospice come. I made sure that she had a bed, and she was a gift to, you know, like having her in my space made my house feel intergenerational. And it reminded me of that ohana connection again. And it was beautiful. And my husband and I took Auntie Leanne in, and she actually adopted both of us in the village. And we know that she would do the same for us. And so she became part of my healing as well. And, you know, it's interesting before she passed, I said, Auntie, we're going to throw a party for you you know, because she was on her way out, and she kind of knew. And she goes, I'm going to be at that party. And I was like, oh yeah. And she goes, you're going to look up, and you're going to see me. I'm going to be on Eva Bird. You remember that, babe? And then I was dancing hula on the beach, and everybody was like, look, Tita, look up. And I look up, and this Eva Bird with long legs, like Auntie Leanne, was circling around. And I knew she had made it into the pole. I knew she was reconnected with the ancestors. I love you, Auntie, and I know she's here. Mahalo. Yeah, we can keep going. Go to the next video. Next. Queer Indigeneity is part of my work with Tent City Queens, was to take this young maho to Washington State to meet their sisters over there. And actually, they gave a talk. So there's a Fa'afafine ran organization called Utopia. And so I was just building that trans-Pacific, what is it called? Partnership, that's right. So we're rethinking the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And we're doing that through creating spaces of home, healing, and connection across our seas, and trying to make sure that our waters are always connecting and exchanging with one another. So that was really cool. And we can go to the Ho'oheno was there with me at the beginning. You can go back. Yeah, there's Ho'oheno helping me plant some aloe in the devil's corner. Trying to make it a healing space. And then, of course, like Saya has the faleo'o over there, and so it's a very different space than it was back then. And then Bobby, of course, with his Lava'i'a. So we still have Lava'i'a. We have traditional fishermen who still live at Pu'uhonua Waianae and still participate in subsistence fishing, right? And there's a very interesting story about one of the Lava'i'a, but I'm not going to tell it. And it's not this one, but. And, you know, we have a long history as Hawaiians of mapping our own landscapes, right? Kalama, he was actually a cartographer for the kingdom and had mapped out. And actually, you can read the work of Kamana Beamer and Kamana Beamer and some others, and look at that work. But in the village, Auntie Loke does the work of mapping the village and practices cartography. So Pu'uhonua Waianae also has its own map, and it's continually updated by Auntie Loke, and she loves doing that work, Yasayo. And then this was from the event that Saya helped to lead. It was the open house. You remember the open house event? And we had about, 600 people come out to support the village. The village at the time was being threatened with an eviction. And so as a response, right, there was this concerted effort to have an open house and just invite people to come in and meet the people and build that intimate empathy as opposed to a settler empathy, right? So, and we can go to the next. Oh, and also part of my work there was to show video clips. So I would have film screenings so that people could connect the land that Pu'uhonua's what they're doing to a longer history of land struggles in Hawaii. So I would have film screenings, and I'd come with a projector, and we did face painting and balloons at one point. And then just have like kuka. It was really interesting to hear some of the feedback from the villagers. You know, there are people in the village who were, you know, evicted from Makua in 1996, who were able to share that mana'o. We actually watched a film on the Makua eviction, and they were actually able to share their mana'o and their story. And it was a really important way for people to realize that what's happening at the Pu'uhonua Waianae is not an isolated thing, but it's part of a longer history of displacement and resistance. Okay. And of course, community cleanups, our favorite, right, people? No. Oh, and then this is a video of Dan, my man Dan, at Pu'uhonua Waianae giving one of his tours. But do we have time to show it? We can just, okay.
When I first came was a few years ago. Auntie Loki was giving tours. She was the one that kind of like really made an effort to know everyone. She mapped out the place. And back then, Auntie Twinkle was like, when I first saw her, she just had all kids around her, like playing, you know, she's just saying, oh, Shaka, you know, but she was basically, she came to heal because she was struggling, you know, she had hard times. But what helped her to heal was she got this desire and this kuleana. She felt this responsibility to ensure everyone was safe. They'd say, hey, you guys okay? Remember, aloha, you know, we need to keep it safe here. Safety, 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 right? There's different shelter options, but as far as I'm aware, there's no other shelter system that allows pets. And, you know, we call it pets, but that's companions too for people. You know, that's their loved ones, you know? So to say, oh, you have to get rid of your pet, it's kind of like, you have to get rid of your child, you have to get rid of your best friend, you know, it's like, and so this is one of the only places that allows for pets. And other shelters are sort of like, they don't have the same feeling of community, you know. It's more like this is a, you know, it's like a school, or, you know, it's more formal. You have like the bosses, there's people, you know, you have strict rules, and it's more like you're being processed as opposed to being like part of your own healing. You know, it's a different sort of there's feeling. Fear everywhere. You can feel the fear. Yeah, you can feel fear. So here is different because you can feel the welcome. You can feel the peace, yeah? It's a different feeling. You know, you walk down these paths, there's not like cars separating you, you know, you can see each other, you say hello, you get to know each other. And so if you're hungry or you're cold, you need clothes, that's why the store is right next door. It's a free store. It's like that. Not only does it bring the community here within the village, but it also creates the community, the Ahupua, you know, like the whole Waianae area, the whole Oahu is coming and donating, and they give. Yeah, please go.
This is for people here, only here.
No, anyone can take too. So people from outside the community can actually come, and if you want something from here, you can take it too. It's about sharing. And
you do more. They're not only taking, but they're giving back to the community.
So part of this community membership is community service. So people volunteer a certain amount of hours to work in the store. And also, you can notice the paths are very clean of trash. There's volunteers to pick up trash.
When you say
everyone gets to practice the good feelings of giving and then receiving, you know, and not just because sometimes when we're really stressed or scared or sad, we just want to be like, oh, give me, you know, give me, and then people get mad at you, and then they go, get out of here, and you're like, oh, I need more, you know, and it's a cycle. But if you're in a community where you get to give back, then you're like, oh, that feels good too. Oh, okay, I can go back to this. Like, oh, okay, and it's like you unclench, you know, and like you can kind of. But if you're in a community where you get to give back, then you're like, oh, that feels good too. Oh, okay, I can go back to this. Like, oh, okay, and it's like you unclench, you know, and like you kind of. You get this is a mala with haloa. There's a lot of native Hawaiians that live here, and a lot of Polynesian, Pacific Islanders, Micronesians. They all eat kalo. Kalo is important for all of us. And it's part of having a village, right? Is growing together. And even though we like to compete with each other, it's important to remember to work together and help each other, right? So.
You're right.
We have bananas. There was chicken. The hard part was keeping the mongoose out. There's a lot of mongoose, so a lot of chickens actually passed away from mongoose invasions. But
so the mongoose
and
taxed the chicken.
And then this is the fale o'o. It's a Samoan style.
Oh.
Thank you.
About
This place, this beautiful house.
You miss it, babe?
Yeah.
Remember when you proposed to me here?
Yeah.
I had
Such
a
a special
library.
feeling. It's strange to not.
I took my book.
It's almost like we gave birth to it. Like this is, or it gave birth to us.
Ew. Eh. Okay. Apo. Apo. Mahalo. That's it.
Gotta go. You just wanna sit down?
Yeah. Yeah.
You guys okay on time? We're a
How are
little
you
bit
guys doing
over,
on
but we
time?
have
Sorry about that.
Karimuana
Hawaiian.
is here to kind of talk story with Kalani just a little bit, and then we'll open it up for questions. But she has some questions from this portion. Got it. I don't know how to turn that part off. Sorry, if you want to introduce yourself, Kari.
You can turn off that light.
I'm trying to figure out how to.
Oh, God. I didn't shave my legs today. Just for you.
Mai tātai, nei rā te mi te puta kia pōra kai mai i tēnei o nā rangi kia puta nei tēnei nā tita a Kalani. Tēnā koe te whai wā. Sorry. Tēnā koe te whai wā a hau ki te kōrero kia koe i tēnei wā. I found out 5 minutes, 10 minutes before the presentation we were going to do Oprah Styles talk story. So I was feverishly writing some notes, but I just wanted to thank you for sharing this time and space with us. And it's always a privilege, my tita, to be able to talk story with you. And I don't like speaking in front of people, so I'm just going to look into your beautiful brown eyes and we're going to talk story. But firstly, Tita, I wanted to say thank you. Mahalo, mahalo, for your work. I know in the world of academia, as an Indigenous person, there's not many PhDs that cross the table that really excite you and give you hope for the future. And your PhD is one of them. And I know that when you produce a PhD, it's like birthing a baby, right? And I think how perfect that you're able to birth your baby and bring it back to the aina that nurtured you. So mahalo to the space, Melissa and the team, for allowing us to be there. So I have a couple of questions and then I'm going to open it up. The first one, Tita, is around the name of your presentation. So I know Constellations of Rebellion must have been months and months of thinking about the appropriate title. So I wanted to give you some space to talk about why you selected that imagery. I know for our people in Aotearoa that Constellations for us is like a roadmap of where we've been, but also directions for how we're going to write with the future that we want. And that the answers are all written in the stars if we know where to look. So can you just talk to us a little bit about why you chose the title for your presentation?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. Mahalo for engaging in this talk story.
Only for you, Tita, only for you.
So actually the name Constellations of Rebellion comes from my dad, who grew up in Waianae Valley. And he shared with, when I talked to him about, Dad, what was it like, back in the 70s, when people lived in tents for, months. And my dad was telling me that back then our whole ohana would come down from Waianae Valley and they would set up these huge tents and they would just camp out for months and months and months. And he said during that time, one of his favorite memories was actually my great-grandpa, Grandpa Keamo, telling him about the stars. And that's sort of how the idea of the constellations of rebellion came into being, was that connection between my moku auhau, especially my dad, who was in the military, and I'm very anti-military, and we have a very complex relationship. And he's always sort of considered me to be very rebellious. So and in some ways, so is my ohana for camping out, but it was just them being Kanaka, and there's a way that that connected also with me going to Pu'uhonua o Wai'anae and living in tents for months, and Auntie Bam, who was another constellation who, lived on the beach and basically told me that that was a place for our people to go to heal. And that it's different from a context that reduces homelessness to just economics and a Marxist analysis, but it actually connects us to our healing and our pu'uhonua and our Kanawai traditions and our ohana. So that's where those constellations of rebellion come from. Yeah. Mahalo.
Kia ora. Tita, one of the most powerful statements that I heard in your presentation was the statement, "We are not homeless." We are not homeless. And it reminded me of languaging and the power that exists in the labels that we place upon others, and also the labels that we own. And I was inspired by the reclamation, I guess, of the people at Pu'uhonua, of the labeling that they chose to place on themselves. But you also talked about your need to experience what it's like to be in your own homeland without aina. And I think Indigenous people across the world can relate to that feeling. We're always going to have a home, and we may be displaced, but we can never ever be disconnected.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that while we have so many of the crew in the audience, can you talk to me a little bit about the movement to reconnect our people to aina? So some of the work that Kuikalike Kakao is doing, which in itself is protest, it's rebellion, and it's also making sure that our people realize that even though they may be houseless, they still have a home in this aina. Can you talk to us about some of the work that the amazing people are doing around that space?
Absolutely. So there's always, that's part of a very long history of reclaiming place and space. And for me, Huikulike Kako represents that beautiful constellation of drawing these different stars together, the stars of governance, of reconnecting to aina-based ea, life, breath, sovereignty, reconnecting to ohana, this intergenerational sense of belonging, and reconnecting our people to their own sense of beauty in that sort of intergenerational, multi-ethnic, multi-gender, and sexually diverse space of, coming together and working together to create, to reclaim space, and also to create possibility around those connections, and supporting that defiance as opposed to toting the status quo, which I feel like is really important. And I think the language part is really key in shifting consciousness so that we can actually think about liberation from our moku auhau, from our genealogies, and how our people have always been part of that liberation practice to claim who we are as a people and to do it defiantly and lovingly and beautifully. And so I was hoping that by engaging in that work that I can remember a sense of being whole in the messiness, Yeah.
Tito, you talked about Western views of places like Pu'uhonua and the stigma attached to that. And you also talked about trying to let people in so that they can see the true beauty that exists in those spaces. And it reminds me of whakatauki Olelo Nobiao from home, and they talk about when people look at a forest that's dying and they think that only death exists there. But in the decay underneath the canopy is where real life exists. And it reminded me of this. And can you just tell me or tell us what you experienced in that place? Not when you did the tours, not when the cameras came in, but in real time. What did you feel and experience in those places?
Freedom is a big thing. Love, connection, ohana, and the first welcoming arms was the kiawe, whose kiawe is not from here, but became very familiar, and that was sort of like, and also the decentering of the human, and that I felt that the village created that space because we live with mongoose and all kinds of centipedes, which is also, I guess, a mo'otu, which I never know, but then I learned about that. But it's just so vibrant with all of these different relations. So I had to reorient myself, kind of like let go of this kind of settler imaginary and reconnect with the aina. And I remember sitting one time in my tent, and I had made this platform. I was just sitting there, and there's all these shooting stars that just, with no light pollution, and it was so peaceful and humbling, and it really was my kupuna who were there in the stars telling me, you're gonna be okay, and that I could trust my na'au, that I could trust in my na'au that my ancestors had created for me. And not, at that time I was kind of like thinking a lot about the judgments and like about, what people would say and all the pilikia that, comes with going into that kind of space. And there was just one time where it was just, boom, it all made sense, and I felt at home. Yeah.
Final question, I promise. Another question I had, it's not really a question, it's an observation, I guess. And again, I speak in metaphors, apologies. We also have another saying back home, Ahupua te atata o te whenua kei ahau, ka tatari ahau, ka ara ake te rā. So even though I only have the shadow of the land in my possession, I will wait, because the sun will rise again. And that's what I'm reminded of in your presentation, and I wanted to mahalo you for that. A really beautiful academic back home, a lady by the name of Anne Milne, she talked about indigeneity or colonization as being taking a beautiful, vivid picture and taking out all of the color. And her work talks about coloring in the white spaces. So I want to thank you, Tita, for coloring in the white spaces and giving other people permission to do the same. Mahalo. Final question. I can definitely see that you have changed the space. My final question is, how has this space changed you? How has this process changed you? From that beautiful young student going in with your savior complex to the beautiful woman that sits in front of us today.
Oh, Jesus loves me. Oh, man. I am so changed and grateful And I feel like the process has definitely opened up unseen spaces, the pull, the darkness, as a space of life for me. And I don't have to fear. I don't have to fear anyone or anything, because that process has taught me that everyone and everything loves me, and I love everyone and everything.
I think we don't have any time for questions, but she's taught us to be rebellious, and Pākē's hand is waving in the air. If we don't have any space is low, I'm just going to open it up if anybody had some questions for Dr. Kalaniopua.
So real quick,
Yeah.
what a great piece of work that you have done, and the life that you have brought into the community. When I met you, you said your Evie was calling you home, and I just love the whole reason why you came home, because it was a deep calling. Anyways, leaving Makaha today, as I passed the sewage plant, I don't know if when you guys came, did you guys see all the people on the beach that got kicked off the beach, and now everything is right on the all their possessions are on the guardrail, like what is that, 10 feet away from the highway? How did you feel when, I just want to say, like, that? How was that? Coming over here to talk about this work you've done, and then seeing that it's dangerous. Like, I felt no compassion by the state or whoever kicked them out of that place to put them in such great danger, and also the roads in Hawaii is like very dangerous. People are dying, the pedestrians.
Well, I think we all need to come together and hopefully build a movement so that we can put our bodies with them. And, I've done it alone, and it's just kind of shitty. And I would like for more of us to put our bodies there and protect the people from that kaumaha, from that violence. I feel like that's probably, it would be beautiful if more people came out, and whenever that happened, that we had a kahea, and, everybody come out to, like they came out for Notre Dame Cathedral, if they could come out for the people here like they do for that, I think we would be in a better place. Yeah. Hi.
I just want to also say mahalo, Kalani, for everything that you do and all that you are, and it has existed far beyond and before you ever thought of doing a dissertation, and it will continue to exist forever. I just wanted to say something in regards to POW, which at first when I saw previous POW, I was like, prisoner of war, all of a sudden went straight to that westernized law, and then it's and then I'm just thinking of POW, practitioners of wellness, protectors of whiteness.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so
open it.
How beautiful to being able to even just change that narrative from what it, because as a Kanaka Maoli in an illegally occupied space, we are prisoners of war. We are constantly having war crimes put onto us, and we keep living with aloha. And so I'm so grateful for you, for Saya, for Ipo, for Auntie Twinkles, and Tinoke, and Tianna, all those beautiful, wonderful people that, yes, you continue to say, screw the stereotype. We know how to heal. We've always known how to do it. And I just want to mahalo you for even being a part of my own healing process, for my mom, and her healing of her heart. And I love you, my tita. I'm so proud of you. So mahalo.
Love you. Mahalo.
Yes. I did that. Tita, I'd like to say I thank you for being a part of our lives every Sunday out at Kalaniopua. And I was wondering, will you see yourself in the next 10 years? Do we see ourselves keep doing what we're doing? Do we see ourselves. Malamao and
I think malama aina, and whatever you guys want me to do, I'll I'll use whatever mana I can to protect our ohana and our aina.
And thank you for being a part of us.
Mahalo. Love you. Mahalo. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for providing this knowledge. I see a lot of. Yesterday I went to the Queen's Palace and learned a lot, and there was definitely so much sorrow there. It broke my heart. I see a lot of intersection between what is happening to Hawaii and what is happening to Black America.
Absolutely.
I think a lot about how what is after the colonization, and still the fact that we are still under, we still are prisoners of war. I think when you were talking about having people come out in support of your people, that is always to go. Just come out, show up, show that you're not alone. But what is left to people who don't show up is that there is so much shame in where we came from, what we're doing, and I can't speak for Hawaiian people, but I know for Black people often it's like, well, shape up, be right presented and stuff like that. I'm wondering how, in your view, how do you get rid of that? Because, people, I am a visitor to Hawaii, and before I got here, people were like, oh, they're camping on the beaches, and so they're shipping people to Hawaii because to camp on the beaches and stuff like that, and I thought that was a real thing, but I realized how ignorant I was from watching this, and they don't like to say that it's actual Hawaiians who are being displaced in this grossness that is happening to such a beautiful island. I'm just wondering, I guess I'm just wondering, how to change that, or get rid of, make to be proud.
I think I embrace my failures. I think that's something I learned along this path, and what I mean by that is that it's stepping away from this kind of perfectionist narrative and pretending like we're all somehow perfect or virginal or unsullied by the messiness of life. And so I want to embrace my messiness and my, I opened up with a broken heart, and my relationship didn't work out, or, my grandma passed away and I thought she would live forever, like that. And so embracing death in a way, as part of life. Death, I think for us is not an end, right? It's just a transformation, right, into a different form. And I think, part of colonization was getting us to buy into this kind of perfectionist narrative, there's a perfect way to be something. And I feel if we can embrace our messiness and allow ourselves to be schooled in different ways, being humble, I think that can open up space for changing the way we think about ourselves and about each other. Because I feel that you know, we've all felt like, oh man, I didn't get in, or I didn't get the job, or I didn't get the dream house, or, you know, I didn't get the perfect man, or, you know, like all of those things I feel like really connect us at our core and our soul in a soulful way. And I feel like that can be a connective thread that can encourage, you know what I mean? It can be encouraging to be like, oh, you know what? I'm not the best speaker, the best mahu, but, you know, maybe I don't olelo Hawaii, but I embrace my fierceness in what I have to offer. Like my aunties are Hawaiian mahjong players. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like they're not up at the lo'i, they're on the mahjong table. But I feel like that is part of like, and that's part of their Hawaiian epistemology. Because that mahjong is how the ohana stays together. In fact, that's like where all the conversations about the conversations happen. And I feel like that's like super important, is to get rid of this perfect narrative or model minority narrative. Like, fuck that shit. I'm totally a shitty minority. Because I mean, I don't fit into this whole like careerism thing. I mean, first of all, I was born like mahu, and so already I was not supposed to exist. You know, my mom and dad weren't thinking, oh, I like my mahu baby, you know what I mean? So, but they had to learn to live with it, just like I had to learn to live with it. And I feel like if we learn to live with the messiness of it, you know, and the imperfections and the failures, like that is a constellation of rebellion that can feed new black holes and polvehi of life. And yeah, so yeah, sorry. Okay.
Mahalo e na kua, mahalo e na kupuna la ea, mahalo me ke aloha la, mahalo me ke aloha la, mahalo.
We have food on the other side. Please come and eat me an eye, and then I'm gonna also bring the stuff over.
Yeah, Mahalo Nui. Love.
I'm so proud. So happy that you put through all that and you are what you are today.
Thank you. Love you. Thank you so much for what you said. You know I'm gonna be on the island.
Steal the show. There ain't nobody